appeal in prayer.
We join our voices again with the voices of those in the streets. Release the tapes. Release the tapes.
Pastor Steve Knight, part of the Charlotte Clergy Coalition for Justice. And again, we are just getting word that police will be making a statement within the hour. A community is on edge. A gunman is on the loose, and 5 people are dead.
This happened in the city of Burlington, a town about 60 miles north of Seattle. Police say the suspect started shooting from a rifle inside a Macy's department store. Mount Vernon Lieutenant Chris Kamek.
It appeared that he walked into the mall on his own first. What he was doing there, I don't know at this point. And then later on, the video image picks him up in Macy's with the rifle.
After killing 5, he simply walked away. Police and the FBI are telling residents to be careful and keep their doors locked. Jeff Pogela, ABC News, Seattle.
2 days to their first debate between Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump. ABC News political analyst Matthew Dowd was asked about its significance.
This is going to be the most important moment of the entire campaign, starting from the nomination process at the convention until Election Day. I think there's without a doubt it's going to have more of an effect than anything else in this race in the time that we have left in this. It will move voters. Now, how permanent that movement is, we don't know. We've seen it happen in the past, but this thing will be watched by as many people as watch the Super Bowl.
You're listening to ABC News.
Here's a special message for those of you who owe the IRS at least $10,000 or more in back taxes. The IRS has special programs in place that could eliminate or reduce your tax debt by thousands of dollars. Call the tax helpline that's been set up to help you. 800-208-3310. Stop the wage garnishments, levies, and tax liens now. Once you've qualified and enrolled, the IRS will stop all the collection activities against you. These unique programs have been allocated to help the economy and significantly reduce or eliminate your tax burden. The IRS is currently accepting reduced settlements and other favorable programs. You may qualify for substantial savings, so get the help you need. If you owe more than $10,000 in taxes, call for free information and to see if you qualify. Take down the number now for the Tax Mediation Hotline, 800-208-3310. That's 800-208-3310. 800-208-3310.
President Obama says it's a story that needs to be told, and he says finally it is.
We're not a burden on America or a stain on America. We're an object of pity or charity for America. We're America.
The nation's first black president today officially opening the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The government says it's making a change in the way it handles infrastructure issues. It says when it is appropriate, it will consult with leaders of Native American nations.
The federal government wants to avoid violent clashes over infrastructure projects like the pipeline being built in North Dakota, which Native Americans have been demonstrating against.
We faced, attack dogs, and we faced policemen.
That protester and others say they were never consulted about the pipeline. And now to make sure that Native Americans do give input, the federal government has invited the leaders of 567 tribes to meetings about infrastructure projects. The meetings will begin next month and be held in 6 regions of the country. Mona Rivera, ABC News.
The plight of elephants dominated the discussion today at an international wildlife meeting in Johannesburg. Conservationists say poachers moved large shipments of African elephant ivory last year, despite global calls to dismantle the trafficking networks. This is ABC News.
I wish I was in school. I wish I was in school. I wish I was in school.
Summer isn't fun when you're hungry.
Give me a math quiz. I'll stay after class. I'll clean the chalkboard. I wish I was in school. I wish I was in school.
If your child relies on free school lunches, we can help provide them with free meals this summer. Visit feedingamerica.org/summer meals to find your local food bank for help. Together, we're feeding America. A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Daria Albinger, ABC News.
From the KMET Weather Center for Beaumont on the Pass area today, we'll have sunny and windy conditions with a high of 88. We'll have wind gusts of 30 miles an hour as we kick off the first weekend of fall. Tonight, it'll be clear and windy. A low 67 as winds gust to 35 miles an hour. For Redlands, we'll have a sunny, hot day. There's a fire weather watch in effect through Monday afternoon, our high 94. For Palm Springs, we'll have plenty of sunshine. It'll be hot this afternoon with a high of 95. I'm Rod Tanner for Smart Talk 1490 KMET.
Conservative Voice Radio on KMET 1490 AM is brought to you every Saturday at 8 a.m. by Antonia's Pizza, located in Cherry Valley Realty, and the Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
Yeah, I'm not wearing a parachute either, but I always go in feet first here. Yes, after a 3,023-hour intermission, I'm back on Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, KMET 1490 AM, KMET 1490am.com. I am the man who was a regular on this program for almost 5 years, JASmius. On Sundays, I host a Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'm very active on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/hardstarboardradio. I am the conservative Ronin, the samurai without a master, the conservative without a party. And you may be wondering, well, why are you on Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KMET instead of Douglas V. Gibbs himself? Well, I'd love to say that I'm back by popular demand, but that would not be accurate. Actually, I'm here because both Doug Gibbs and Alex Ferguson are elsewhere. Specifically, the Combat Veterans for Congress Patriotic Gala event at the San Diego Marriott in Mission Valley, 8757 Rio San Diego Drive, San Diego, California, 92108. If you are out and about in transit and you are anywhere near the San Diego area, you might want to drop by. Ben Carson will be the keynote speaker, so that's an attraction. And Doug and Alex are there as credentialed members of the press representing KMET 1490 AM, so that's kind of cool for them. Alex is serving as Doug's cameraman because I'm sure he's going to get plenty of interviews to put on Doug's YouTube channel. So when I get down there, if you're anywhere in the area, give it a look and give a listen today. Now, I'm sure Doug explained somewhat at the time why I departed the program and departed politicalpistachio.com, but it basically comes down to a disagreement over Donald Trump. Now, Doug and Alex are supporting and voting for Donald Trump to stop Hillary Clinton, which in and of itself is certainly a noble and, well, how would you describe it? A noble motivation, which under any other circumstances I would be with them on, except that I can't do it because I don't support Donald Trump. I don't support Hillary Clinton. I'm actually voting for Evan McMullin in November for president of the United States, the independent conservative candidate. And so because it's kind of inconvenient, kind of impractical to have a political commentator not commentating on one side of the presidential race because of the editorial decision of the host, we went our separate ways, and that's fine. It's Doug's show, and it's Doug's blog, and I was honored and gratified to be a contributor to both for as long as I was. And so, but I am back here today because I received an email last night from Mr. Gibbs saying, would you like to co-host the show tomorrow, or guest host the show tomorrow? And, well, this is coming out of left field, unexpected, but I said, well, with no editorial restriction, sure. And so Doug, in email parlance, I think he used an emoji for it, but he said, sigh, okay, but include a disclaimer that the host, Douglas V. Gibbs, disagrees with the views on Donald Trump that will be expressed in this particular episode of Constitution Radio. So I want to get that disclaimer out there. Doug and I do not agree on Donald Trump. Doug and Alex are voting for Trump to stop Hillary Clinton in a state that Hillary Clinton will carry by some 2.4 million votes. So it's kind of an odd combination of conscience and futility. And were I to follow suit, I'd be in the same futility boat, because in my state of Washington, Mrs. Clinton is going to carry by upwards of probably 500,000 votes. So I don't have that conflict. I don't have that conundrum. Well, I don't like Trump, but I want to stop Hillary. Hillary's going to carry Washington. Hillary's going to carry California. I mean, I could understand that mentality, that point of view in a swing state where you actually have a chance of stopping Hillary, but as far as Washington and California are concerned, it's off the deep end blue, so it's not anything that I have to worry about. So I want to get that disclaimer out there, because it seems like every time I host Constitution Radio on behalf of Mr. Gibbs, something has just happened. The first time I did so, way back September 15th, 2012, was the week of the Benghazi debacle. So I had plenty of things to talk about. Now, this isn't that big, but in the context of Trump and of the 2016 presidential race on the Republican side, it is. And Caleb Howe at Red State has what I think is an outstanding summation, an outstanding analysis of what happened yesterday, because yesterday, Senator Ted Cruz endorsed Donald Trump for President of the United States, in a move directly contradictory of all his prior statements about Trump's fitness for office. He cited the need to stop Hillary Clinton. He asserted that he and his family had forgiven Trump's many transgressions against them. He offered it as a stand for the nation over his own desires and above the need to protect the conservative cause, whatever it may be these days. Now, I've seen, there are Cruz supporters who are in grief, and they're wailing and gnashing of teeth, and Glenn Beck expressed his profound, almost shocked disappointment. But it's not the end of the world, actually. Cruz supporters out there who are distraught by this. I mean, it isn't ideal, but we're not all going to turn into zombies or zombie food. But still, after the news broke, triumphal chest-thumping predictably ensued among the predictable set. The never Trump folks, who have made attacking people who refuse to endorse Donald Trump their only business and special creepy obsession this election. Now, they don't need to be named. I mean, we all know enough to know who these sad creatures are, and the creatures know it themselves without needing to hear about it here. They will continue to gloat for days over the supposed death of Never Trump, which is like a cat. It never seems to run out of lives, despite the fact that Ted Cruz was not at any point part of Never Trump. He never said, I'm Never Trump. He never did. Go back, check, do your research. He never said that. The fact that Never Trump is not an organization, but just a self-identifier for people who refuse to vote for him, for Trump, And the really important fact that a sizable portion, if not majority, of those who self-identify as Never Trump were also equally opposed to Cruz in the primary and would probably have welcomed the term Never Cruz all along. But who needs facts, right? Certainly not Trump-voting, sadly obsessive little creatures. Let them do what they do. This is already more airtime than they rightly deserve. Now, there is still the matter of Ted's endorsement itself and of Ted Cruz himself. And I think he's made a huge mistake. And I'll tell you why. But first, we should dispense with some of the reasons fans of this decision have been offering. They, and by they I mean generally Trump voters, say he is choosing the good of the country, Cruz that is, over the good of the conservative movement, which is not possible. Conservative values and policy ideas are good for the country. Trump's ideas are bad for the country. Dumping the former in favor of the latter is not doing something good for your country. Now, stopping Hillary is an admirable cause. But that's the primary season talk. That ship has sailed, ladies and gentlemen. There are now and instead 2 Hillarys running. They both have dumb hair. They are both older than dirt. They are both pathologically incapable of honesty. And they are both big government liberals determined to destroy the conservative movement forever. If you believe, as some do, that she's even more destroy-happy than Trump is, then try to stop her. Many good people, such as Douglas V. Gibbs and Alex Ferguson, have made that choice. But don't try to turn it into a virtue in and of itself. That's what the monsters do. In a classic case of projection, they cast upon Never Trump / none of the above that which they are the most guilty of. Namely, they accuse the Never Trumpers of sanctimony and condescension. A laughable complaint from the people who never stop piously bragging about how they are putting country first, which makes them sound like John McCain, actually, or how they are stopping the real threat, and in this, Ted Cruz is no different. Say you want to stop Hillary. Don't martyr yourself as making some big sacrifice for your country. It's really kind of gauche. Now, for a specific example, Cruz cites Trump's new, and this time he super means it, list of potential Supreme Court nominees he's totally and for real going to select from, in lieu of his partial birth abortion zealot sister and his gay friend, CEO of PayPal. Now, at the top of that list is Senator Mike Lee, who already said, guffawingly, no thanks on Twitter, appropriately enough. Senator Lee said that the Trump campaign never reached out to him, never asked him if he wanted a Supreme Court appointment, never even floated the idea to him. They just stuck him on a list. Trump is bigot on sticking people on lists against their will, and it was enough to sucker Ted Cruz into bowing down to the Washington Cartel. Senator Lee's office said all of this was a surprise to them, including Cruz's endorsement, in which he specifically mentions Lee. Oh yeah, that's an airtight list. Good call, Ted. Now look, a lot of reluctant Trump voters have made a decision they aren't happy with. They, and this is key, do not try to sell Donald Trump as some wise or virtuous product. They don't lie to pitch their ware. They do not suddenly say they never took him seriously on immigration when there are ample recordings of them saying repeatedly that they did take him seriously on immigration. These reluctant Trump voters are usually smart, good, conservative Republican people. Again, like Mr. Gibbs and Mr. Ferguson. They can be admired for their tough decision. I know several people in that category, as I just aforementioned. All of them are honest about how terrible Trump is. All of them make credible, reasonable arguments without trashing those who have not crossed the line. None of them write for Breitbart. You know, they're good people. And that's fine. But don't pitch Trump as some boon to the nation. It's not only dishonest, it's dumb. But anyway, I've wandered far afield. Why is it a huge mistake for Ted Cruz to endorse Donald Trump? Well, I think the most devastating assessment I saw yesterday was the one tweeted by Mediaite's John Ziegler, who said Ted Cruz was with Trump when he could have beaten him, was against him when he couldn't beat him, then he non-endorsed and then caved for zero gain. Ouch. The truth is as painful, and the truth is that this was politically bad, as in not especially helpful to Ted Cruz. It was badly timed. He has little to gain from it. I mean, look, the party is in for a pound now. They're going to try to drag Donald Trump across the finish line. And in 4 years, Republican hopefuls are still going to need the party. So in the sense that playing ball now may, and I mean may, get the party to play ball later, then fine. That is a minor upside. Likewise, satisfying donors. But when it comes to voters, all Ted Cruz has done is taken his only remaining dedicated fan base, his hardcore supporters who make up an also large, though probably not half, segment of the Never Trump population, and utterly disappointed them. And I mean utterly. Cruz groups on Facebook are changing their name. Twitter was awash with gnashing teeth and garment rending. Cruz has alienated them thoroughly. Now, don't get me wrong, voters have short memories, and a lot of people won't care any more about it in 4 years, despite the passion now. But a lot of them will. But more than that, in the short term, that hardcore base of popular support that he could wield as a weapon against the establishment and in his many fights in the Senate, well, that mandate is out the window. Not to mention the enormous hit to his credibility. Both he and Trump said unforgivable, irrevocable things about one another. No takesies, backsies things. I'm telling mom on you things. Putting on this show of bygone letting is not an easy sell in the same sense that breathing concrete is not easy. We all know what they said. But Hillary just isn't a good enough reason to toss out on Facebook to explain the mother of all about faces. And among a non-trivial group of people that have influence on the waters where Ted Cruz swims, he wasn't doing super great on the credibility front already. He isn't perfect, you might say, in their eyes. I repeat, in their eyes. So the think pieces will ask, where does Never Trump go from here? Because it's easier and more salacious and self-serving to ignore the fact that Cruz had nothing to do with Never Trump. But it's a dumb question, so feel free to ignore it. The real question is about where Ted Cruz goes from here. I can only tell you how a voter sees it. I don't swim in that shark-infested D.C. water. And as a voter, I suggest he pipe down. Keep your thoughts to yourself for a while. Do what you do in the Senate. Avoid interviews at all costs. After the election, sit down with a group of advisors, do a few primal screams, maybe punch a hippie or two, and reevaluate. It would have been better to do nothing instead of endorse. It would have been better to lend a hand to the party than endorse. It would have been better and more helpful and still made peace with the establishment to help down-ticket races across the country than it was to endorse. It would have been better to invent a new kind of cheese, quit your job, get a spot on late-night TV, and pitch it with the slogan, "I would kill every animal in the zodiac to get this cheese," than it was to endorse. But that's all over now. Senator Cruz has made his choice. Now, some will praise it, some will condemn it, some will thump their sagging old white guy chests about it, and some will pull out their hair and make voodoo dolls of Ted Cruz with it. But if Senator Cruz wanted my opinion, and I'm sure he doesn't, he should just keep quiet. Go zen for a while. Consider the next few months his rebuilding year, and then get back to the good work he's always done, and we trust he will do again. But This is Ted Cruz we're talking about, the man who painstakingly laid the foundation for a presidential run over the past 4 years that has now flushed that brand where the sun don't shine. After the break, as Mr. Gibbs needs to pay his bills, we'll talk about what happened in Charlotte this week and what happened just yesterday up in my neck of the woods, the state of Washington. We'll be right back. Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, JASmius, sitting in. You got a dent in your door, a scratch in your fender, or a scratch in your door and a dent in your fender. If you need auto detailing, if you need fire shooting decals on the side of your car, if you need a rally stripe right down the middle of your hardtop, I don't care what it is. The Patriots at All-Star Collision are the place you want to go. They're the only place to go. 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Web address allstarci.com to see all that they do and what they're all about. Phone number 951-279-9161. All-Star Collision, the kings of wreck and roll.
Hi, this is Ed Hoffman, President Wholesale Capital Corporation, your direct mortgage lender. Real estate prices are still low, which means now's the time to buy your next home before they go up. Whether it's a home to live in, a vacation house, or an investment property, we can meet your mortgage financing needs to help you realize the next phase of your American dream. At Wholesale Capital Corporation, we make sure you get a loan that you can afford with terms that work for you. Wholesale Capital welcomes FHA buyers, conventional buyers, jumbo loan buyers, and we proudly help the U.S. military veterans take advantage of the zero down payment VA loan program. Nobody treats veterans better than Wholesale Capital Corporation. Seniors, if you're interested in creating an additional stream of income or just making your mortgage payment go away with a reverse mortgage, Wholesale Capital would love to help you. To speak with a loan officer who has your best interests in mind, call Wholesale Capital at 855-640-2020. That's area code 855-640-2020. Wholesale Capital Corporation, where we can close.
What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com. Help me fight the good fight. This radio program is funded by advertising dollars. So, if you are a business, add Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs to your business portfolio. If you are a listener, become a patron of the business's advertising on this program. Without advertising, your weekend dose of truth ends. With more advertising, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs grows, and we will be on the way to win the battle to restore the Republic. To learn more, email us at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com or visit douglasvgibbs.com.
And now, back to our program.
And now, back to our program. I like that. I like the basso profundo like that. JASmius, sitting in for Douglas V. Gibbs on Constitution Radio, KME 1490am.com, KMET 1490am, live. Yeah, totally out of the blue, like I said in the first segment. Now, this segment, I want to discuss what happened in Charlotte this week, which was what happened in Cleveland, and what happened in Madison, Wisconsin, and what happened in Ferguson, and what happened in Staten Island, et cetera, et cetera. There's a pattern here, you may have noticed. Did want to make brief mention, up in my neck of the woods, we had what the local law enforcement is insisting up and down was not a terrorist act. Draw your own conclusions from that. It's up in Burlington, Washington, about 60 miles north of Seattle in Snohomish County. A gunman, police said, killed 5 people in a Washington State mall. Actually, it was in a Macy's, to be specific, remained at large Saturday as authorities appealed for help in identifying the suspect. They said there were no indications the slayings north of Seattle were a terrorist act, until they are. Apparently, one of the eyewitnesses said that the gunman looked Hispanic. Well, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But in terms of general appearance, there is a lot of similarity between Hispanics and Middle Easterners and Just saying. I don't know if it was a Middle Easterner. I don't know if it was Hispanic. The gunman got away. They haven't caught him yet at airtime today. So who knows? But don't be surprised if what happened yesterday, last evening at the Cascade Mall in Burlington, Washington, turns out to be very similar to what happened last weekend. But this really kind of gets into the narrative versus the facts, as Robert Driscoll tied together at nationalreview.com on Thursday. And now jumping to conclusions with police shootings and then denying terrorism with bombings. Now in Charlotte, a black man is shot and killed by police, specifically by a black officer who works under a black chief of police, but don't let that slow down your systemic racism roll. Soon the protests start. The politicians talk. The protests turn violent. The National Guard is called in. And before you can blink, Charlotte is added to the litany of cities cited by the Black Lives Matter movement as examples of killing of armed black men. If you hear Ferguson, Staten Island, Baltimore, and Cleveland read together, what pops to mind? That the police were cleared in each case? Probably not. Add Charlotte to the list because the narrative matters more than the facts. I mean, we have a baseline here. We have a 2-year baseline, ladies and gentlemen, trying to start up Barack Obama's country to, nationwide, coast-to-coast race war. It is apparently of little significance to anyone that Keith Lamont Scott's death in Charlotte has not been investigated, or that in the end the officer's use of deadly force might well have been justified. I mean, Scott was armed. The picture of the incident clearly shows a gun on the ground outside his car. I mean, books are not shaped like that, all right, unless they've gone through a shredder or something. Now, as it was pointed out within a week of the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson a couple of years ago, federal civil rights prosecutions are exceedingly rare, and the greater risk is raising community expectations of a prosecution, rather than encouraging the patients to wait for the facts to come out. Unfortunately, when it comes to police-involved shootings, some view the narrative that structural racism leads to scores of innocent black men being gunned down on the streets by police with impunity is more important than waiting to see whether a given case actually fits into that narrative. Now, after Ferguson, then U.S. Attorney General Eric the Red Holder traveled to Missouri to express his support for the narrative that policing is racially biased, while arguably staying neutral, other than, of course, dispatching a huge number of FBI agents to investigate, on the shooting itself. Now, as was written after that particular trip, there may be some short-term political benefit to agreeing with the narrative, but in the long term, if the facts don't justify a prosecution, the community will have a difficult time when no case is brought. Or, as was the case in Baltimore, when State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby prosecuted or tried to prosecute the Baltimore Six, the 6 Baltimore police officers, 2 or 3 of whom were African American, by the way, and acquittal after mistrial after, you get the picture. I mean, she whiffed. She was over because she never should have brought such overheated charges in the first place. And it was all done to satisfy the mob, all done to satisfy Black Lives Matter, and to, of course, not so coincidentally, advance her political ambitions. Now, it's easy to see the power of the narrative over the facts by looking at Ferguson. Notwithstanding that Eric the Red Holder's Justice Department cleared Officer Darren Wilson completely, yes, Holder's Justice Department cleared Officer Wilson, that the DOJ report established that hands up, don't shoot was a complete fabrication, and that Michael Brown had indeed attacked Officer Wilson after strong-arm robbing a convenience store, Ferguson is still cable news shorthand for an innocent black man being unjustifiably gunned down in the street, a.k.a. a Ferguson situation. Charlotte, North Carolina, regardless of the outcome, and I'll go out on a limb and say there will be no prosecution of the officer in question, is now in the same company. And violent protests, vandalism, and general hooliganism are tacitly tolerated by the political left because the narrative is, in their minds, valid, even if this shooting is eventually found to be justified. That will get much less press than what they're trying to highlight now. Now, in contrast to the Keith Lamont Scott shooting, compare the typical liberal reaction, and I love this, to the spate of terrorist attacks this past weekend. A man in a Minnesota mall who, according to eyewitnesses, mentioned Allah and inquired whether his victims were Muslim before stabbing them, wounded 10 people before being shot by an off-duty police officer. In a fit of Islamophobia, right? In addition, 2 explosive devices were intentionally detonated near the Chelsea neighborhood in Manhattan, injuring scores of people. Yet, the many outlets and people who push the racially biased policing narrative without waiting for the facts to develop will rush, I say, to assure the public that these incidents are not terrorism until it is no longer deniable, and then they will deny them still. My personal favorite was New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, who in the same press conference reported that the explosions in Chelsea had been set off intentionally and refused to label the act terrorism. Now, I'm not sure what non-terrorist reason for intentionally exploding devices on the streets of Manhattan Mayor de Blasio wanted to leave open the possibility of, but regardless, the contrast with the police shootings is clear. For the left, when it comes to terrorist acts, the narrative, we have terrorists in our country committed to killing us, is disputed. And why is it disputed? Well, because Muslims are one of their constituencies, one of the left's constituencies. Even if the facts are clear, for example, workplace violence at Fort Hood, while for police shootings, the reverse is true. The narrative is endorsed, or at least understood, even if the facts don't support it, because police officers are not a constituency of the left, generally speaking. Now, here's a crazy thought. What if, when the Scott shooting occurred in Charlotte, the media and the political left had been as cautious about characterizing the incident as part of the racially biased policing narrative as they are about acknowledging that a given terrorist act might have something to do with terrorism? What if the mayor had said, "Why are you protesting? We don't know anything yet." What if a respected community leader had said, "You know, you can't unburn that black-owned small business if it turns out this officer was innocent, so let's all calm down"? I mean, isn't that inherent to sound, responsible leadership? Haven't seen Barack Obama tell anybody to calm down when it came to these police shooting incidents. So what if the media and political leaders were just as reluctant to suggest police misconduct prior to a full investigation as they are to suggest that terrorist acts have something to do with terrorism? And what if pigs start flying out of my nether regions? In other words, it will never happen, it would never happen, because it's all about the narrative. And when the facts don't match the narrative, the facts need to be adjusted to fit the narrative. It's as simple as that. I mean, the black man who got shot in Charlotte, Mr. Scott, He did. Now, see, this fits in perfectly with that. Let me see if I can find it here. The CNN interviewed the Charlotte chapter NAACP president, Corinne Mack. The topic was the conflicting reports between family and the Charlotte Police Department. The family has insisted that Scott was simply sitting in his car reading a book as he waited for his son's school bus to arrive. They contend that when he stepped out of his car, he was holding a book, not a gun. The Charlotte Police Department have said that Scott was holding a gun, and while he didn't point it at them, he ignored repeated commands to drop the gun before he was shot. This account, the police account, was actually corroborated by witnesses on the scene. And there was also a gun recovered near where Scott fell. They didn't find any book. Now, if the account of the Charlotte Police Department proves to be true, it would now appear to be a clear-cut case of the public rushing to promote an anti-police initiative. Now, Mack did little to dispel the notion that her side cares about truth or the lives of the officers involved. She just said flat out, I don't care. It doesn't matter if he had a gun. The narrative must rule. The narrative overrides the facts. The narrative has to triumph. Now, yes, the Second Amendment gives law-abiding citizens the right to keep and bear arms. And I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment and would deny no responsible citizen that right. But looking at what Max said, she shows a glaring and irresponsible lack of knowledge of gun ownership. To begin, no law enforcement officer who is faced with a suspect holding a gun in his hand is required to find out if this person has a permit to carry it. These may be split-second decisions, and chit-chat doesn't really go beyond the command for the perpetrator to drop the weapon. A respectful and wise gun owner would comply first and discuss permits and licenses after. So, what happens? I mean, bottom line is, what happens when the police stop you when you have your gun in the car? You place the gun on the dash, put both hands out the window, then inform the approaching officer that you have a gun and are a licensed carrier. I mean, it's really not complicated. You have to understand, police in these situations are hyped up, they're tense, they don't know what they're encountering, and everybody knows if you stop a black motorist in this situation, the likely consequences are not difficult to figure out. So you just be calm, keep the situation calm. The more calm you keep the situation, the less likely anything is going to happen. It's a pity Mr. Scott didn't figure that out. And it's a pity the Black Lives Matter keeps pushing the narrative that keeps leading to more and more of these incidents that lead to unarmed, armed black men getting shot. After the break, preview of the less than historic first installment in the Clinton-Trump debates. Stay tuned. JASmius sitting in for Douglas Beacon.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, the headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
Conservative Voice Radio on KMET 1490 AM is brought to you every Saturday at 8 a.m. by Antonia's Pizza, located in Cherry Valley Realty, and the Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party.
Hi, this is Ed Hoffman, President Wholesale Capital Corporation, your direct mortgage lender. Real estate prices are still low, which means now's the time to buy your next home before they go up. Whether it's a home to live in, a vacation house, or an investment property, we can meet your mortgage financing needs to help you realize the next phase of your American dream. At Wholesale Capital Corporation, we make sure you get a loan that you can afford with terms that work for you. Wholesale Capital welcomes FHA buyers, conventional buyers, jumbo loan buyers, and we proudly help the U.S. military veterans take advantage of the zero down payment VA loan program. Nobody treats veterans better than Wholesale Capital Corporation. Seniors, if you're interested in creating an additional stream of income or just making your mortgage payment go away with a reverse mortgage, Wholesale Capital would love to help you. To speak with a loan officer who has your best interests in mind, call Wholesale Capital at 855-640-2020. That's area code 855-640-2020. Wholesale Capital Corporation, where we can close.
And now, back to our program.
Back again for the third segment of Constitution Radio. Let's begin. JASmius in the center seat of the Starship Pistachio on this Saturday, September the 24th, 2016, where the sun is shining in my part of the country, believe it or not, after not doing so much of the week. Now, if you have studied diligently and did well in history class, you should be familiar with the Lincoln-Douglas debates. They took place in 1858 when Abraham Lincoln was challenging the Democrat incumbent, Stephen A. Douglas, for the United States Senate. And they were historic debates. They were debates over slavery, over how to handle it, the policy therein, and they went down in history. They were historic. The Clinton-Trump debates, not so much. I mean, these are the two most unpopular politicians in the country. Yes, Trump is a politician, in case you weren't paying attention. When you decide to run for public office, guess what? You're a politician. You're a professional politician. I mean, that distinction really has never mattered to me. But Monday is the first installment, the first bout. And these debates will showcase, as Jonah Goldberg analyzed yesterday in his syndicated column, how the candidates are polar opposites. But the question is, can they reverse the perception of their own flaws? Now, you know how presidential debates work. They're joint press conferences. They're not debates. And who wins is who makes fewer gaffes or fewer memorable gaffes. Well, Donald Trump is a gaffe machine, and Hillary Clinton runs an even chance of falling face down on the table. So, we'll see how that. I hope it doesn't happen, because everybody loves to hear her shrieking, grating voice on the airwaves when she deigns to show up. She's running a front porch campaign, folks. It's consistent with what I said about Hillary Clinton from the beginning. The more visible she is, the worse she does. If you're wondering why she hasn't held many rallies and doesn't seem to be very active in the campaign, that's why. And maybe it's because her health is failing, but it's also because the more people see of her, the less they like her. Now, this Monday, we will see Hillary Clinton battle Donald Trump in their first presidential debate. It's difficult to capture the otherworldliness of it all. Most of the commentary centers around Trump, and for good reason. He's the X factor. Some see him as a brilliant, media-savvy disruptor, shaking the foundation of the political establishment. Others see him as a Rodney Dangerfield-esque character with a touch of Peter Sellers' Chauncey Gardner, who managed to bluff his way onto the national stage, demanding respect. And that barely scratches the surface. Between friends and foes, the descriptions get more ridiculous by the hour. Trump is Cincinnatus. He's Hitler. He's Reagan. He's Orange Muppet Hitler, in the words of some celebrities. He's George Washington. He's some other. Well, he's Benito Mussolini. How about that? Let's just vary up the epithets here for a moment, and so on. But it's worth remembering that Hillary Clinton, in her own excruciatingly dull, grating, and pedantic way, has long been a larger-than-life figure as well. I mean, it may not seem like it, given that she often sounds like a luncheon speaker at a conference of insurance industry actuaries. But if you were a student of, I was going to say the lady, but I can't do it. If you were a student of Mrs. Clinton, you would know that the flinty demeanor is widely believed to be a tightly managed veneer, hiding a thoroughly ideological, somewhat paranoid, and testy woman. Testy with a Y, not an E. Now, one needn't credit all of the wild rumors and allegations about lamp-throwing, hurled expletives, and petty revenge-seeking to still believe that there's more to Mrs. Clinton than the relentless stream of cliches and platitudes that she spouts with metronomic monotony. She clearly has the ability to elicit loyalty from very powerful people and to bequeath power to very loyal people, and undeserving, without having to make them sign non-disclosure agreements the way her opponent does. That alone suggests there's something more to her than meets the eye. Her supporters, in fact, insist that's the case, that the real Hillary is a verdant oasis of wit and charm in the vast desert of her public persona. To borrow a phrase from The Who, the Hillary we see is an eminence front, a put-on. The natural question at that point being, why? Why would you put out that public persona and hide a persona that would be so much more politically advantageous? Beats me. Intriguingly, this is almost the mirror version of what many of Trump's biggest fans say about him, except they claim that the bluster and bullying, the stunted, ill-fitting vocabulary, and seemingly bone-dry reservoir of policy expertise is what you might call an everyman front. He may talk like a Joe Six-Pack working one of his construction sites, but underneath, allegedly, is one of the most clever and shrewd businessmen ever to walk the earth, playing chess 10 moves ahead on a 3D chessboard with Spock on the other side getting his rear end handed to him. Now, the political consultants no doubt have a long to-do list for each of them. Mrs. Clinton has almost certainly committed to memory a whole catalog of necessary micro-panders to specific constituencies and demographics, like left-handed 19-year-old Asian American diabetic English majors attending community college, that kind of thing. And it seems a sure bet that Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway has endeavored to impress upon her candidate, forlornly, the importance of being on his best behavior, or what passes for it, with Donald Trump. Now, the first debate, and there will be 3, allegedly, and then if prophecies hold true, the river turns to blood, will probably be fought defensively. Both are sufficiently unpopular with voters outside their respective bases that each is probably most fearful, or should be, of pushing undecideds away with a gaffe. But looked at more broadly, the most remarkable thing is how Mrs. Clinton's weaknesses mirror Trump's strengths, and vice versa. Trump's biggest vulnerability is that voters are worried about his temperament and intellectual grasp of the relevant issues. If he can demonstrate a fraction of Mrs. Clinton's policy chops and steadiness, it would go very, very far to reassure doubters. Mrs. Clinton's most significant challenge is to persuade voters that underneath that animatronic facade and reputation for dishonesty, there's actually a real person in there. These are essentially mirror problems. No one can deny he's all personality. Meanwhile, she has a 7-point presentation explaining that she has one. Now, predictions are foolish in this politically ridiculous year. But I think it's a safe bet that by the time the debates are over, both camps will declare their candidate the winner. Beyond the meaningless declarations of victory, La Clinta Nostra will likely also insist that Mrs. Clinton exposed her opponent's dismayingly shallow grasp of facts and policy. And, just as likely, the Trump train will shout that their guy pulled the mask off crooked Hillary and exposed her for the corrupt, duplicitous woman that she is. Now, given the awful choices before us, both will probably be right. Now, the Clinton camp will be correct in that instance, but with the vast majority of voters as policy ignorant as Trump is, that may not count for much. And the Trump supporters' shouts will be at best a redundancy because she's long since exposed her duplicity and corruption all by herself by the sheer cosmic enormity of it. And the vast majority of voters have never really cared much about it going back a quarter of a century. No, ladies and gentlemen, the winner, quote-unquote, of this joint media appearance, they're most certainly not debates, especially this time, will be the one who buries him or herself less than the other. With Hillary's polling inversely proportional to her visibility, as I said earlier, her best bet will be to assume the role of kindly grandmother, implicitly daring Trump to do what comes naturally to him, prepared to show righteous fang when the opportunity presents itself. Trump's best bet is, well, it would be to keep his mouth shut and impersonate a mime and hope that Mrs. Clinton faints in mid-shriek. That's obviously not going to happen. So the most likely result, since both roles are beyond the respective candidates' acting ranges, most likely outcome, a wash. But what does it matter, since there will be two more encounters after this one, and neither candidate has the respective sort of stamina, her health, him, self-discipline and self-control, to possibly make it that far without more major self-inflicted damage. Doesn't matter to me. I'll be watching the titanic clash of the Atlanta Falcons and New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football. That's better entertainment right there. And then, because it'll come out, there will be gaffes, there will be mistakes, and whoever makes more, they'll be the loser, and whoever makes less, they will be the winner. I wish to express my gratitude for the trust invested in me by my friend Douglas V. Gibbs. We're ex-colleagues, but we're still friends. On Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs today. Doug will be back, of course, next week. Doug and Alex. And since I didn't get the chance to say it 4 months ago, I will say it now. Thank you for the chance to be on this program and listening to what I have to say over the past few years and today. And who knows, maybe someday I'll talk to you again. We'll see you next week. Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. See you later.